everybody. I am here with my magical friend Molly. We're going to be talking about all things channeling and communicating with spirit. How are you doing today, Molly?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Before we get into our topic of discussion today, I have a question for you. What kind of animal do you think would be the best stand-up comedian?
I am gonna tell you what my
Okay.
favorite. Okay.
Yeah.
So I used to work with a woman who would make jokes and then just wait there, sort of like, and it
I
also
love that.
reminded me of like a moray eel.
Okay.
Like, because they would just sit there sort of being like,
Like that. Yeah. I love that. That's hilarious.
so I think if you Photoshop a little microphone in front of a picture of an eel, it would look like a joker who just made a joke. So like that's what I would recommend.
That's hilarious. You know what's so wild too is I watched this video yesterday, this girl on TikTok, and she was in she was in the ocean with her friend or somewhere, and she was like, I just need you to slowly back up. And she was like, What? Why? And there was this giant moray eel that was like swimming towards her, but he was just like chilling in the ocean or whatever. It was massive. It's so funny that you said that. I
Oh,
was
that's
like, oh my God.
hilarious. Oh my
Yeah,
God, that would terrify me. That
it was
gives me
crazy.
full-on Princess Bride, like in the, you know what I mean, where
I
they like
do.
come on the head. Oh my God, yeah. But no, I think pictures of eels is they're like with their mouths open, just like is just the silliest thing to me. So I think that they would be great as stand-up comedians because they're always waiting for a joke, waiting for the
Time
laugh,
I see one now, I'm just gonna envision that there's like a little microphone
right?
in his face. That's so funny. They do. Why is her mouth always open like that? Now that I think about it, wow.
Right. And it's like I just think of them as like a bad stand-up comedian, right? Where they're like waiting for the laughter, but it's actually ever coming, you know what I mean? Yeah.
No,
So
I think that's fantastic. I think it's fantastic.
I love that. That's such a good icebreaker.
Yes, yes. There's always funny answers I get back from that. I said a donkey originally because they like laugh at themselves, and I love
That
people
would be
that
very
laugh at
funny. I know. Yeah.
themselves.
It would make more people laugh, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. So speaking of our topic today, what does channeling mean to you?
Yes, I'm so excited to get into this. So, channeling, I feel like I was thinking a lot about that question and thinking about kind of how it relates to what we know of getting into the different sort of like brainwave states.
Mm,
So, I think that it's important to know that channeling can come kind of like at the different depths and levels. And so, the first thing I was thinking about was like how anybody, regardless of any sort of concept of channeling or spirituality, can get into flow state, which is like
hmm
a lot of artists and musicians will really get into it, but like I get into it when I'm cooking and like and if you write or anything like that. And so I think recognizing kind of like what that energy feels like is one of the first ways to recognize that you're kind of tapping into flow state, tapping into sort of your own channeled energy state
hmm
versus channeling from other things, including your higher self or other entities and stuff. And so that was the first thing I wanted to talk about was like flow state and like how channeling for me kind of began in that. And then utilizing different modes, I was able to kind of like dive in further. So for example, in flow state, when you're either like painting or listening to music or whatever, a lot of times you'll kind of get that very like gentle inspiration, right? About like
mm
how the music should go, where the paint should go, how the writing should go, and that kind of thing. And I would say that's like the first, kind of like the first instincts of recognizing that you're sort of like in something that you're kind of collaborating with, but like you're almost getting inspiration or guidance slightly outside of you, you know? And so
Like little
like
nudges, like, oh, what if we do this?
mhm.
Yeah.
And like, and I would encourage people to practice it in flow state, you know? So like, let's say you have a painting in front of you and or like a canvas in front of you and you're able to paint. If you feel nudged to do a blue mark over here, that's the flow state, right? Like versus like just deciding to ignore it, do a little red mark over here, then that's your
hmm
will kind of overpowering that like flow. And so I often, through this conversation, I'm sure I will be comparing energy and channeling to art a lot because that's how
I
it
love
it makes sense for me. So, And I also think that there's just so many less restrictions and guidance when you think of it like art rather than like a science, right? And so thinking of it like art and being able to get into it in any way that people like get into art is I think very helpful. So I definitely think flow state was one of like the first ways I got into it. And then I started really understanding more about like channeled messages. And I would say that like slightly next level, which is like more like intuitive guided messages, really when I started getting into card readings. So,
Mm.
excuse me. So that's where doing it for myself first. Um, doing a little bit of breath work, kind of getting your body nice and like relaxed and like getting into it. The cards then, when I would read them for myself, it's almost like they became a like full sentences, right? So I would be
Mm.
like thinking of a question, you pull the card, and it became a very clear call and response. So therefore, as you then pulled other cards and sometimes didn't then have to go back to the full description of them, you just kind of use them as like a sentence building, paragraph building, story building. That's where I felt like I was able to start piecing together things, and I would get like words or sentences, messages or visions and like that kind of thing of how they all kind of came together. To me, that was like a slightly deeper level of that messaging coming through where it's like I as a human Molly was not necessarily putting together these messages in this way. I was allowing them to that's what it felt like channeling, where it's like they were getting pieced together for me. So I'm gonna share that. And
Were you
then
using tarot cards or oracle cards? Do you mind if I ask, or both?
please, yeah, please ask. So I have always been really attracted to oracle cards. So I actually don't use tarot only because I didn't want to be bombarded by all the information that tarot
Yeah, it's
contains.
already like preset in the tarot cards to a certain
PC.
extent, obviously, but yes.
Yeah. Well, and it's like there's a lot of historical context, and there was also a lot of just kind of like societal bias at the time, because I
Mhm.
started doing card readings about like 12 years ago. And so people were still a little bit spooked out by tarot at that time. I think there's a lot more openness to it now, it seems like. But I had someone read for me from angel cards and from like an animal spirit, elemental deck.
Mhm.
I then went and got a deck of my own, which actually is an animal spirit deck, is actually called
Love.
Animal Spirit. Love this deck,
Yeah.
love this deck. This is such a good deck to ease in to card readings. And this is literally the exact same deck that I picked up 12 years ago that I've been using since then. And now it's like secondhand. It's like I literally
Mhm.
use it. We're connected. But so I used those, and that was really helpful too, because it was more like sentence building and story building with Oracle decks rather than the tarot cards for me.
Mhm.
It was just a little bit more malleable in a way, you know?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I tell people if you were wanting to get into channeling, oftentimes spirit animals or working with animals is a great segue in because animals are safe, they're fun, and they're cute.
yes.
So that can be your bridge over if we're a little nervous about what can come through on the other side. Well, let's just start with animals. Those are 3D and
Totally.
tangible and very easy to begin with.
Totally.
Yes.
And animals and elementals is, very much like where I spent a lot of my kind of like energy connections into for sure. And then, so that is where I practiced a lot of receiving, um, kind of like how,
That's so funny. I hope everybody could see that on the recording, but there was like a bunch of balloons that just came up on Molly's side.
you wanted to congratulate
Yeah,
me.
they're like, yes.
I'm sorry, my dog's barking.
It's fine.
Okay. So that was so funny. So that was how I started getting a lot of like nudges in how to kind of guide these conversations for me. And
Mhm.
then I started doing card readings for close friends and stuff like that. Sorry. And I doing it for other people, that's also where I started. It's almost like as you're in a conversation with somebody and you kind of get nudges about maybe like what kind of questions to like dig into to sort of like help them unpack or unfold kind of the things that they're going through. That's where it started getting even stronger for me.
Mhm.
I think it's the trash guys. Sorry, everybody.
Oh, no, it's okay. It looks like you're having, like, a full-blown conversation with her, like, "Let me
Just,
tell you."
just yell at me. So sorry. Um, so in doing it for other people, that started getting stronger. And around this time, I was also managing people. And so I would have one-on-ones, and I felt like I was really able to tap into that kind of like flow state and kind of almost like channeled energy of like how to help somebody, not necessarily as a therapist, but like as a manager of kind of like
Mhm,
what's going on and how's this going and da da da. And I felt that same sort of energy, like intuitive energy of like how to navigate this and where to go with it, that I was then getting with cards. And so all of that was kind of like getting practiced at the same time. And then the last thing I wanted to share, so that's what I would recommend starting with for people. But I also wanted to share that about 2 years ago was when I really started getting lots of like new gifts. And so that's where I actually started seeing um getting channeled messages, and they were much more tied in with like clairvoyance, and
mm,
it being able to see like, for example, I was sitting at this table and someone was across from me, and I was able to see what was essentially like with my third eye like a glittery veil over them, and it was sort of representative of like that energy armor or shield that I later now understand more of, and like I'm
mm,
able to into through meditation. But it was one of the first times that I was getting channeled messages in a way of like new information that I, again, as Molly the human, wouldn't have gotten, you know? And so now when I also do like card readings, I'll sometimes get little blips of things when I connect into people's energy. So like, for example, I'll do a card reading and I'm like, were you recently at the beach? I'm getting flashes of you at the beach and that kind of thing. And they're like, I
mm.
was at the beach and I loved it and I'm already planning my next trip and like that kind of thing. And for me, that is a little bit of psychic intuition, a little bit of channeled information. And it's also, I see it as a little gift and a little like present from the universe to be like, hey, here's the bridge. And this is going to make the person that you're working with really open to what it is that you're about to get into, because this is something that you wouldn't have known about them, you know? And I'm like, it's very warming and very like, very intuitive and very bridge building. And so I love that. And so since then, I've then gotten into way heavier channeling stuff, but I wanted to take a pause there if you wanted to like
Yes.
get
Before we get into,
a
like, the deeper stuff. Uh, I love that. That's why I always say if when you're getting into channeling, especially when you're working with other people, is to always say the thing, because you
yeah,
never know what's going to resonate with that other person. And that's the key to them kind of letting it down their walls and their guards and having a
yeah.
little bit more trust and open communication. So just say the thing. What's coming
Say the
through.
thing. Say the thing. And later on, when we kind of talk a little bit about like how to channel and how to get yourself prepared for it, one of the things I was going to bring up, and I'll bring it up here too, is as you continue practicing, you're going to get really clear about what feels like yeses and nos. And so as you're channeling, if it doesn't feel like a big, like loud no, then it's a yes and you need to say it.
Mhm,
And like you said, say the thing, because you never know what words, imagery, or concept might be the key to unlock something for somebody. I'm getting chills as I'm talking about this. And again, it could be the bridge building, because it could be something that's been in their mind that,
mhm,
like, you know, they may even still be a little bit hesitant, closed off, or something like that to kind of the session until you say the thing. And then they're like, holy moly, this is actually real. And like, we're actually having a real thing. Or like, that's been the message that I've been looking for, or that's been the thing I've been thinking about. And how would you know? You know what I mean? Like,
mhm.
why would you know that? And so, like, definitely trusting that. And then, you know, recognizing when it feels like, yes, this is something I should say. Or if it comes up and there feels like a big red no, you don't have to say it in that way. You might be able to like slightly change it, you know, and like just kind of like tapping into that. But then the more you get used to it, the easier it is. It's almost like picking like sentences or guidance out of the air, and you're like, oh,
Mhm.
thing that's coming, and here we go. And like it just gets so easy, you know, so much easier.
Oh, yeah, the messages get a lot clearer as you learn to attune to what your body is trying to tell you as far as your guidance system, like, "Oh, yes. No."
It's like plugging into just this constant energy river source, right? And it's like
Mhm.
when you get yourself into the place where you're able to plug into it, then you plug in, and it's like you're not making stuff up. You're just able to access this energy source of kind of the global consciousness, the connected consciousness. And so, yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. I think also being open to things changing when you're in a session with somebody and going in different directions and being open to that, not always being super structured. I had a session yesterday where they were coming to me for one thing, but I could actually see underneath that it was this whole other thing that needed to be talked about. And then we started
yes,
talking about it, and that person's like, oh my God, I feel so much better. I didn't know I needed to talk about that. Sometimes
yeah,
as a practitioner, we know what direction
yeah,
to head to
yeah.
help them have the biggest energy release or most forward movement. Did you feel at all nervous when you first started channeling to kind of step outside of those parameters if you felt like you needed to?
Yeah, especially because it was tied in with card reading. So you had people coming to you for guidance. There were definitely initial times when I was helping people and didn't really trust the channeling messages or like how I should necessarily direct that.
Mhm.
Because more often than not, you're directing it into some of the harder work, right? And it's like you don't exactly know if someone wants to get into that. And then also, if you know the people, you may know that they not don't want to get into that. You know what I mean? Like it's like their stuff, and they might be coming for like a quick little relationship reading, but it turns out
Really
it's
don't
actually
see the-
underlying trust issues, right? Like that kind of thing.
yeah.
Or something completely else, right? Like they're in the completely wrong career, completely wrong location. They need to do a whole move, and it's not about
Hmm.
relationship at all. They need to change their life. And so like those things are hard because you don't want to be there's a very odd balance of like not being almost like a secret keeper in a way, right? Like you want to make sure that they have full autonomy and empowerment to have the information that is applicable to them without being a gatekeeper. And so, like, there is a balance of getting into that channeled state, getting them information without feeling like there's all this information that you're supposed to bring to them,
Hmm.
kind of like really measuring how they feel about things. And that's a big part of just kind of practicing the human to human interaction,
Yeah.
the kind of conversation of it and being aware of how they're responding
Hmm.
bring certain things up, and like navigate and dive that direction. But the last thing I'll say is they are coming to you for guidance. And so more often than not, they want you to get to the real nuggets of things that are wrong, or that can be cleared and reviewed and adjusted without them knowing that that's like the depth that you're going to go to. So kind of just like be gentle with it and practice it and like get really comfortable with having the human to human interaction before going really deep with anybody. Just to kind of know how to navigate it from a human's perspective. If we were all just spirit, we'd love to get right into like the deep stuff and heal it together and move on to the next deep stuff and all of that. But we're humans, so we have, and especially people that are new to this and receiving maybe their first reading or, they're already very vulnerable. You just want to be very sensitive to that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I akin it kind of to pushing on the gas pedal. And if we need to let off a little bit and just being mindful of how that person's responding to us and how you're feeling in your body. Because a
Yeah.
lot of us as channelers can feel how that other person is
Yeah.
feeling. So I kind of just push the boundaries a little bit on those topics and see how they respond. And if we need to pull back a little bit, that's okay. And some people are like, go all the way with the gas.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And I think that the more you get really in tune with the things that are coming up for you through channeling. So for example, channeling for me is both visuals and feelings. And so I forget what that's called, but is it clairs? It's not
Oh, with the
sensing.
feelings,
Uh,
clairsentience.
is it clairsentience? Okay.
I think claircognizance is like inner knowing.
Yeah, so I think I've
Yeah.
got clairvoyance, claircognizance, and clairsentience because
Mhm.
sometimes things will come up where I'm like, for example, if I'm doing like a relationship reading, I did this just last night, and like as I was going to go pull cards for the relationship and for the couple, I felt just this overwhelming like sense of love and trust building. And I was like, oh, this is a really beautiful relationship where you're actually able to practice trust in a really safe environment. And she was like, yeah. I was like, yeah, like I feel that. That's beautiful, And so all this to say that like you'll feel it in feelings, and sometimes you'll see it in pictures, you'll see it in whatever sort of clairs you have, and they will develop as well. And it's helpful to kind of share what those things are that come up, because they come up in different ways. We're seeing facets of the same thing, utilizing our skills that are the different clairs.
Yeah, I think it's really important to spend some time as a newer channeler, is figuring out what your clear abilities are, because that can really help you find things much more quickly if you say, oh, this is the way that I interpret information.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, 100%. I think it's so fascinating too that people have such different strengths and things. For example, like I'm not into senses. Like a lot of other people can like smell, feel, hear, that kind of thing. Mine is all visuals. And what I've now learned too is that my mom's really strong in visuals, my sisters are really strong in visuals. So I think that that's a
Wow.
little bit like a genetic
Hmm.
predisposition to have that. And so that's a big part of how energy comes through for me. I was always a really creative kid with a overactive imagination is what they call
Hmm.
it. Now I know a little bit more. So I always just had a really strong, rich inner world where I could see things with like, especially I think reading a lot as a kid, you then build those worlds with your imagery. And so those all became really strong building blocks for me, that when channeling became a thing, suddenly I was then starting to see things with my third eye that would have been imagination, images before. But now
Hmm.
I was getting downloads and things that I wouldn't have information about or access to, or I wouldn't be able to just imagine for the person that I'm working with.
Absolutely. That makes sense too, why you're so artistic, because
Yes.
of the visuals. And I will say for anybody watching this that you might be listening right now and saying, well, I don't see anything
Yes.
in my mind's eye. That will not prevent you from channeling. I do not see any images when I am
Right.
channeling. I feel images instead. It's just black screen up here. So that's why I say figuring out what kind of clair for you, because it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. You just interpret information differently, and that's perfect for you.
That's exactly right. And that's why I wanted to bring it up, because seeing things for me is one of the strongest for me.
Mhm.
And it's through understanding what other people's strengths are that I realize that that's not kind of like the standard thing. And so, and it is for some people, but it's not for others. And it's just much like artistic gifts. Some people are better at singing versus painting versus whatever. And so,
Mhm.
like, you have your strengths. And it really is about that exploration about kind of like how information kind of comes to you. Quick little nugget that I'll plug here is meditation. Like it's the best way to just clear your mind and see
Yeah.
kind of what does come through. Is it senses? Is it feelings? Is it pictures? Is it hearing things, etc.? Yeah.
I also recommend active meditations for people, especially that might have ADHD or have a difficult time
Yes.
kind of sitting in the silence of do some things that help you get into flow state. Exactly
Yeah.
like you were talking about, because it really helps you just put all those thoughts and stress and anxiety over here and be in the present moment. And the present moment is where the channeling comes through.
Yes. And I would argue that the people watching this are already kind of on some sort of spiritual journey.
Mhm.
And usually when that's happening, and especially when you're really at the beginning of it, you are getting information bombarded. Like it is like downloads and
Mhm.
synchronicities, things are happening nonstop. This is super normal. And it's also really hard as a human being to kind of both integrate and adjust to that. And getting into flow state is one of the more healthiest like avenues of getting your energy clear. So whether that is, listening to music, cleaning, cooking, listening to music, getting into art, doing yoga,
Swimming.
swimming, and being in a bath, those are all of my like major flow states where I can actually just do kind of like work with my body while I'm not necessarily super processing things with my mind. And that is like, it's one of the healthiest energy expressions that you can do, to just release stuff from the body that's in here, from the mind itself that's not necessarily like the crown,
Mhm.
and like releasing your stuff from the actual reality of the like boring human reality, the very stressful, logistical pressures, fears, all of those things, getting into flow state really helps release a lot of that. And I wanted to bring up kind of just, especially those that are in synchronicity, because when you are having synchronicities happen nonstop, which usually happens when you're going through the healing journey, you kind of get into that phase where it's just like everything is
Everything's
connected.
a sign. Everything's
Everything's a
connected. You're
sign,
like, oh my
everything's
God, everything.
connected. And it's like,
Yeah.
and it's not a lie, right? They are
Yeah.
all connected. You are. And what I've learned is that that sort of synchronicity level is a specific kind of like wavelength that you get into. So it's like
Mhm.
once you're in it, everything's connected. And then the people that you're around start seeing synchronicities and stuff too. But it can just be so much for the brain to kind of like try and comprehend and integrate and like figure out what those lessons are at that time that you're
Mhm.
like, let me just take a break, and just do something else. And so full permission to get into flow state doing something that has nothing to do with like writing down all your synchronicities and trying to figure out what they
Yeah.
mean. you
Yeah,
know?
there was a point that I hit because it was very overwhelming, and I was like, I'm just gonna take this as I'm on the right path, but I'm on the right path, and we're just gonna clump it all up together and be like, I'm in the right direction, because trying to sit here and decipher all this stuff was like so much.
100%. And
Yeah.
it's always really reassuring to know that your subconscious is always taking in information and
Yes.
figuring it out and processing it, and it's like you can sometimes just give your conscious a little breather, a little break, and it's like go in, go into flow state, do the things that speak to you and make you relax. Don't force yourself into something that if someone else says relaxes them, and it's like
Mhm.
just figure out what works for you. And that's one of the best ways just to kind of also release stressors from the body that would actually be preventing you from also channeling.
Stress and anxiety and fear are some of the top things that will prevent you from channeling. Like because it creates so much chaos in your mind. And when you have chaos in your mind, you are not open to receive
Yeah.
messages. And I was going to say with the meditating as well, I'm a podcast galley. I love listening to podcasts. I love listening to comedy specials. I love listening to very intense music, like dance music.
Yeah.
And I have to be mindful of not always doing that when I'm doing active meditations, because sometimes it's better to do those in the silence,
Yeah.
because that's when the thoughts come in. Yes, but it's easier to sit in the silence when you're keeping your body moving in some type of capacity.
Yeah, 100%. And it's, a big part of it is just kind of tapping into yourself, right? Kind of like, do you
Mm.
feel like you are holding tension in the body? Do you feel like when you're listening to the intensive music, when you're in flow state, does it feel like it's more stimuli or does it feel like it's
Mhm.
facilitating the flow state, right? And it's just kind of tapping into like what feels good at the time. Like I don't use the exact same I don't do the exact same thing every time I want to get into it because I don't always want to clean or I don't always want to cook
Right.
or like it's not exactly that. Silence is very, very helpful for me though. So it's very rare that I actually put anything on that's music related if I'm gonna get into like meditation or flow state. But I often will listen to like nature sounds. And so I do like bird song or like running water and that kind of thing. And that usually is helpful for my nervous system to recognize that we are in a safe space, that
Mhm.
the animals I'm listening to are in safe spaces, and that like that kind of helps calm me down in that way, to get my nervous system regulated, without getting it stimulated from music. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love listening to birds and running water because it does make my body feel safe.
Yeah.
I will say also that if you are newer to meditations, guided meditations really helped me because it taught me how to get into a relaxed state so that when I was in the silence, I was not super activated. So that's a great place to start.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. So, can we get into sort of getting oneself into channeled state, into
Oh, for
meditation?
sure. Yeah, go for it.
That's a good segue. So one of the first things that I want to talk about is just really tapping into your body's needs and getting your recognizing kind of like the signals that you get from your body. So, one, as it relates to channeling, the closer you get into what feels like yeses and nos from the body, easier channeling gets.
Mhm.
But also really getting in touch with your body. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about just many of us, whether it's ADHD, whether it's many other things like CPTSD, PTSD, body trauma, all kinds of traumas, really disassociate ourselves from our body.
Mhm.
For many, many reasons. And so one of the first things that you're going to need to do with channeling, it can feel very etheric and like it's all happening in the head, but you really are this human vessel. And so you need to be fully connected into the human vessel, this body that is taking you around this world. And so my stuff was like codependency. We'll get into people pleasing a little bit later.
Okay.
Yeah, but so like codependency, which is where you kind of get flung into a dynamic where you're either the victim, the rescuer, or even getting persecuted or persecuting within that triangle. And you're always kind of bouncing between those three things. What that means is that you're almost always available to somebody else for their needs. And
Mhm.
what that means is that you are then disassociating from your own needs. And
Mhm.
so a big part of codependency is being conditioned to kind of push down your emotions and your feelings, and your emotions and your feelings come through in the body. So the biggest like healing that I did was this very helpful, just body release codependency reprogramming. It was like tapping, EMFT, hypnotherapy, all these different things can really, somatic healing can really help with a lot of this. But it was allowing myself to reconnect with my body, number one, and then reconnecting with my body, recognize where I was holding tension. And I want to bring that up because, as you were saying, if you have chaos in your mind or if you have chaos in your body, you're not going to be able to channel because your vessel needs to be clear for you to receive anything. And
Mhm.
you get your vessel clear through the things that we were talking about, through getting into flow state, getting into water, doing all those different things. And so one of the things that once I was able to reconnect to my body that helped me clearing stuff out was also recognizing where I was holding emotions. So I like to give this because I think it was very helpful. So we sectioned the body into three parts: the head, the chest, and the belly, kind of like the lower abdomen
Mhm.
right near the hips. And it was just scanning the body before doing any sort of meditation or channeling work. And it was like, is there tension in the head? If so, that's indicative of anger. And a big part of this was not, now what are all the reasons that you're angry? It was just recognizing that there was anger there and releasing it as anger, not tying it into the stories, because that's the conscious wanting to make logic and wanting to make reason, and also wanting to like prove why you feel that way.
Mhm.
But proving why you're angry doesn't help release your anger.
Right. Now we're just tacking on guilt and shame onto it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was about tapping into the body. So in the head was anger, in the chest was sadness, and then in the belly was either guilt, shame, or fear, or all three of those, or
Mm.
the three. And so a big part of it was just sitting down with myself and then feeling where I was feeling those things and then releasing those, acknowledging them, respecting them. It's okay that I have sadness. It's okay that I have sadness. It's okay that I feel guilty. It's okay that I feel shame. And then once you say that enough, feel that enough, you feel the release of it, and then you take care of the vessel afterwards. That's also something that was really helpful for me to learn because I wasn't taught that. So that was like, it was a 5 point check-in. After you have a big cry, after you have a big energy release, do you have to go to the bathroom? Do you need food, water, shower or bath, or rest? And it's
Mhm.
like, think of yourself as a baby. What do babies need? Check into your little internal baby. What is that? What does it need? Because it's like reparenting yourself
Oh
again.
yeah.
In doing that, I learned these tactics and being able to then like, okay, I'm holding tension in my chest. There's some sadness there. There's some grief there that I need to release. And so in doing that, that has then made my vessel so much more of a receptive vessel, like to receive, like a conductive one, to actually receive information, because I was storing so much in my body. And I was storing so much in my body because I wasn't taught how to release it, and I was taught to actually push it down. So
Mhm.
I wanted to share a lot of that because I think it can be frustrating when someone is on this spiritual path and you want to kind of start accessing these higher dimensional things, and for it to feel easy and feel easier. And if it's not easy, it's only because of the like energetic weight that you're currently holding
Mhm.
within, you know, and you can shift that through emotional work, through flow work, through all of that, by really reconnecting into the body, figuring out where you're holding stressors, and then releasing that through body movement, through intentional movement, through emotional respect
Mhm.
to yourself and all of that. So I specifically wanted to bring those up because I think it's really helpful for people to know that like it really does come down to body work first. And that body work can be done in flow state, but it's intentional work. And if you're trying to really get into strong, high channeling work, you really need to like reconnect to the body first and tend to the vessel.
Absolutely. I think sometimes when people are asking how to connect with their intuition, we're not always equating intuition is your emotions.
Mm,
It
mm.
is, it is one and the same. And
Yeah.
so we have to be able to clear out all that heavy denseness, like you're saying, in order to receive those higher ethereal emotions and those feelings and those intuitive nudges and guidance. And then also to be able to help other people with their trauma wounds or their PTSD or helping them clear their emotions. If you teach yourself how to do that, it's very easy then to help other people with that because you viscerally experience instead of theoretically talking about it.
Yeah. I often think of physical bodies as like sponges. And if
Mhm.
we have emotions are supposed to come in and out. They're supposed to flow through emotion,
Mhm.
energy, emotion. It's supposed to go in and out. And when they don't, it gets stuck. And so I kind of think of like if you had like a sponge and you had paint and you just kind of like put paint on like throughout the whole sponge. Let's say red is anger, right? Blue is sadness. Like until you clear that sponge out and you put some like soap in there and water in there, it's not going to come out. It's just in there. And that could be yours and it could also be others. And so I
Mhm.
do think that there's a big part of this discernment, this like internal discernment of figuring out what is being held in my body is like what's mine, what can be released, and like what can be cleared out so that that intuition can come through. I almost think of the intuition as like the warm soapy water, right? It's like that's
Mhm.
like clean source energy. And it might be as you're getting that soapy water in the sponge, it might be mixing with the sadness and it might be mixing with the anger. But the more you get that intuition, the more you get that energy cleared out, the more that stuff will actually clear out. And you realize that that's not something that's a part of you. And so I do think that there's, with intuition, you do get emotions and thoughts and guidance and all of that. But I think that it can be clouded by what's in there right now. And so it is important to kind of like it's almost like start with the body first, release what's happening in the body, and then see what kind of comes through. And then it's at that point that you can start trusting the stuff that's coming through because that's the cleaner energy, you know?
That was
Yeah.
beautiful imagery. I love that analogy that you had. Also, that tangible exercise of let's check in with this top portion of our body and the middle part and then the lower part, and then equating those to different emotions. That's really beneficial for identifying and also not attaching wise or guilt or
Before
shame. Just like, no, I am experiencing anger. I am experiencing sadness. This is not me at my core personality. It's just something that is channeling through and I can release it. We don't have to get into the depths every
right,
single time of where that is coming from, right? Because not everybody has time and energy to do that 24/7.
right,
It's not needed
right.
oftentimes.
Right, and it's not needed. And so, and those really relate to the chakras, right? And so like,
Mhm.
within the lower abdomen, within the hip area, if that's where you're storing guilt, shame, and fear, that's also where your sacral, where your solar plexus, and specifically where your root chakra is. And so if you're going to want to channel, you also think of like lightning, it needs to have a way to get to the ground. Lightning wants to be conducted. And so, similar to source energy, if you don't have your root area clear, then you're going to be getting information in, but it's not able to fully kind of like permeate through you and like ground itself all the way through, giving you nice, clean energy. It's kind of it's just not it's not fully forming its function. And so like you then as a vessel, it's your responsibility to get your vessel nice and clear to receive things like that if this is your goal, if that's the goal is to channel. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Taking care of your physical body, I cannot even explain to people how important that is. I had a conversation with my friend yesterday where we were going to talk on the phone, and usually we FaceTime. And I told her, I said, I had 3 sessions today, channeling sessions for other people. And some of them were a lot more to sift through than others. Some of them had a little bit more of a heaviness aspect. And that's fine. We love that, working through those things. But I said, is there any way that instead of FaceTime, we can just talk on the phone? Because I have to go walk for an hour. Like, I have to go walk around this lake by my home and get all of that cortisol and adrenaline out, because if I don't,
Yeah.
tomorrow I
Yeah.
will be super activated all day long and feel fuzzy and agitated and very irritable. And I did all this beautiful work with all these beautiful people, but if I don't take care of myself at the end of the day, I'm gonna be busted down for
Yeah.
the next
Yeah. 100%.
3 days.
Yeah.
Right. So we love
Right.
taking care of other people, but I gotta take care of myself as well.
For sure. And and I will say that in facilitating energy work for other people, you know, we can get as strong as we can to not take on stuff. And there is a benefit in doing energy work for other people, that you also get more source energy in yourself. And like
Hmm.
sometimes I am more revitalized, but there's always that shared energy exchange, right? So there's always like, and also we're still human, so we're also like hearing some of the difficulties that they're going through, right?
Yeah.
And we have like that empathy. And so 100% a very important practice for me as well is when I finish a session, I immediately go outside. I get out of
Hmm.
my space, especially because I do a lot of stuff virtually. And I'm like, I can't just be in here. So I gotta like, I go outside, I go with my dog, I feel the sun, I feel the wind, I like connect in with the trees, I release a lot of the stuff through there. I thankfully have a park right near me. And so like that's so it's a privilege, and it is so beautiful to be able to connect in with nature immediately after doing energy work for somebody.
Hmm.
And it is absolutely, it's like my prescription, or it's, yeah, my prescription. Like
Yeah.
it's like exactly what has to happen after I do, whether it's an event or if I do a one-on-one, I need to have that break where I then go outside, and energy and nature just definitely clears it. And that's just part of like the upkeep of being an
Yeah.
energy practitioner. It's just part of it. Just like if I was like a physical, like athletic coach, I wouldn't not work out, right? I wouldn't not, like take
Hmm.
care
You gotta do
of
that stuff for your own
myself.
too.
Yeah, if I'm
Yeah.
like, like if I was helping somebody, with their physical needs, I
Hmm.
want to make sure that my physical needs are taken care of. If I'm helping people with their energetic needs, I need to make sure my energetic needs are taken care of,
Yeah.
like I can then better help people. And so, yeah, it's so important. And it's like it's the most important thing, because we are the conduit. This is the vessel
Hmm.
that's around everything. It when you start really getting into channeled information, insights, and downloads, you start really getting glimpses into the broader universe as a whole. And it's so intoxicating, because our illusion of reality can be really shitty sometimes. And so it's like it can be so fun to just want to sort of
I
stay
was
up
gonna
here
be up here all the time.
and do things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, unfortunately, we're still kind of walking around here, but fortunately, we're the ones that are actually receiving it as humans here. This is how it's working. It's like a telephone call. If you don't have a phone on the other side, it's not a telephone call.
Hmm.
We're the telephone on the other side. You are the physical telephone of it. So it's like, take care of yourself. Make sure that your wires are good. Like make sure that you are able to receive, if that's what you want to be doing. And so that's the commitment, that's the commitment to the bit. That's the
Good to
commitment,
the bed.
but to being that receptacle is like I will honor that I want to do this, so therefore to do this I need to do these things, and that's clearing your vessel as much as you can and just really tapping into it. I will say too, I kind of want to bring this up, especially because the people watching this are probably going to be kind of pursuing being a
Mhm.
practitioner for others. One of the things I wanted to talk about, I was in tech for 15 years. And so that very much is the culture, as is our society, of like work till you bleed and die.
Yeah.
Like there's like no concept of like take time for yourself so that you're an okay worker for other people. There's
Hmm.
just coming into this work, being an energy healer, I give a large chunk of my time to myself. For every single day that I have where I am helping other people, I give myself at least 2 to 3 hours throughout the day where I give it back to myself. And I want to say that because that's the investment. It would be like if you wanted to be a higher education teacher and you give yourself 2 to 3 hours of learning more. The investment for us is the, oh, I'm getting full body
Yeah, me
chills.
too. I was like, oh yes, yes, yes. Okay.
So, woo!
Tell me,
Um,
Molly.
yeah. But this is the investment for ourselves. This
Yeah.
is equal to getting your master's, right? In business, right? It's like it is the time that you are committing to your craft, to your vessel, so that you can then further the work that you're doing for others and for yourself. It is necessary. And so this is also me reminding myself that this is necessary because I don't always give myself that kind of time.
Yeah.
But I gave myself permission for that really early on. And I'm glad that I did because it was such a difference where taking time for yourself in the corporate world, you are guilt ridden, right? They are
Yeah.
shaming you. How dare you not just work, you know, work 60 hours and charge for 40, like that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And it's such a it's a completely different paradigm and completely different structure and template of doing energy work because it's a much more balance, right? And so it's like
Mhm.
I this kind of energy work, so now I do this for myself, and that balances out. It's all this recalibration so that you can continue and be sustainable. That's the other thing is tech and corporate are not sustainable, so like
Yeah.
meaning people burn out. You can't sustain without taking care of yourself. And they don't encourage people to take care of themselves, so it's not sustainable. People leave. Here, I don't want to leave. I don't want someone else to come in and do what I'm doing for my business.
Mhm.
So you got to give that short investment. Yeah.
I do. Yesterday I had 3 sessions, and me in the past would have said, "Oh, I'm going to do all of this other type of like office work and logistics and emails and answering comments and like all these things in betwixt those sessions." But
Mhm.
me now is more of like an advanced channeler and know how fundamentally important it is to refill back up your cup so you can be a clear channel. I said, in between all of these sessions, I'm doing something that's fun for me that has nothing to do with my business or other people. So that when I jump into the next one, it's like, oh, okay, we're back to our regular homeostasis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really, really is so important not to go back to back to back to back on these things because it can make you really sick. It can make your physical body sick. It can make your soul sick. It can make you resent helping people or running
Yes.
your business. Like it is very energizing to help other persons, but it also takes your own personal energy to sift through these things with people.
Yes. 100%. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't say let's say I give an hour to somebody. I'm not necessarily requiring a full hour for myself, but kind of like I almost do a 50-50 of like the amount of energy I'm pouring out. I want to make sure that I give myself
Hmm.
in whatever method that looks like. So it could be quiet time. For me, one of my biggest things, because I have ADHD, but I'm also Virgo moon, Virgo rising, but I'm also a Gemini sun. So I'm like chaotic for a very big portion of my personality. And then I'm like super organized for another portion. And I have in the energy world really poured into more of the like chaos and I'm like, organic growth and like all of that. And what I've been finding now in running my business is that I get a lot of flow state and a lot of clarity and a lot of enjoyment in taking what I knew out of structure in work and actually applying it to like my business and all of that.
Hmm.
So if it's not me walking out at the park, it's me organizing my mail or organizing
Hmm.
my closet or, kind of like spending time thinking about like brainstorming for my business. Those are all the things that still feed me without being depleting, that are also in service for me continuing to do this in like a very much more structured and scalable way. And so know that there's just different things that you can do to kind of like feed oneself and also kind of like release it. That's not the same as responding to emails, always being on the comments and all of that. That sort of plugged in nature is very depleting.
Yeah, I think that's great of what is giving me energy because as you were saying that, and I'm glad that you brought that up. So, not everything in my business drains me
Yeah.
for all of those kind of answering emails, answering comments, and all those things. Like, there's things that really give me back energy working on certain projects
Yeah.
that is fun for me. So, it still can be in the realms of business. It doesn't always have to be, like you said, external things, but
Yeah.
finding what is actually giving me energy, what is refueling me instead of taking from me. That's important.
Mm-hmm. And I
Yes.
think that's important both in figuring out what kind of like channeling and energy work you want to do. And then also for those that are watching this that are getting into the idea of running their own business for it, it's also really important to keep that in mind. What's giving me energy? What's
Mm-hmm.
depleting energy? For example, I was in corporate forever, and a big part of my history in corporate was being like customer facing and then doing really like thorough customer follow-ups. And so for the last like year and a half, when I would have a client, I would do very thorough follow-ups. I'm like we're talking page and a half for people. And that would include people that I would do 5-10 minute readings at an event for. I would do like a full text follow-up. And it was only now that I'm like, you know what? This is not exactly even. Like it's
Yeah.
this homework for me, which is it's now force, not flow. Like this is definitely pulling and pushing, and it's not only tapping into old triggers of feeling like I'm just overwhelmed in my homework of follow-ups that I
Mhm.
had in corporate, but it's also it wasn't a proper uh balance.
Yeah,
That's
energy exchange.
exchange. Yeah, it
Yeah.
wasn't a proper energy exchange of what I was giving them versus what I was getting back. And initially, when I first started my business, I'm like, well, you never know what you're going to get back, because at one of my events, someone then booked me for another event. And it's like, huh,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's worth this. But what I've now learned is that that was one person out of one event, and it's only happened that one time.
Yeah.
I've had dozens of events, you know what I mean? So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, lesson learned. And actually, I want to share this with the group just as like an idea of ways that you can pivot things, because follow-ups were really hard for me, especially at events. And
Mm-hmm.
what I've now done is I bought a little Polaroid mini camera, and I figured out a way to print my QR code on stickers. And now when I do events, I have them record an audio memo of like the
What a good
like.
idea.
You do that too?
No, I don't do that, but I record every session I have with people unless they say no, they don't want that, because I don't have the energy to do a full follow-up, and I say we're just going to do it in real time so you can
Yeah.
watch it later. I highly recommend recording people's sessions for them, whether it's
Yeah.
audio or
And especially,
video.
yeah, if it's virtual, it's super easy because then you
Yeah.
just record and then you're like, here's the link, and follow up if you got questions,
Yeah,
right?
but in person's that's a fantastic idea as well. And I'm going to mention that to some of my friends as well that do kind of in-person events of like, hey, you could do
You
this.
should. You
Yeah.
should. Let me show you, because I've got an example of it right here. And I was so proud when I figured this out, because I'm like, okay, this gives them everything that they need, which is they have their recording of the actual reading itself. They've got their little Polaroid of the cards that we pulled, right?
You, I love
So
that.
and then on the back is my QR code and my business information. So if they want to follow me, they can follow me. If they want to
Hmm.
book, and they can keep this in their wallet as like a little business card, like a takeaway. And so feel free to share that. I am not trademarking this process. I encourage it. It was worth the investment for the Polaroid and the cameras and the pictures for me, because it's no longer than 15 to 25 minutes of a follow-up per person.
Hmm.
Only get $10. You know what I mean? So I'm like, this is just so anyway, I only say this to say, when you are both an energy worker running your own business, tap in to where your energy is getting depleted. And if it doesn't seem like a fair energy exchange, you can pivot, you can make changes. And it might take a little while to figure out what the aha is
Hmm.
to kind of solve for the problem, but start recognizing where energy is getting depleted and it's not getting returned back in the right way, because that's going to give you some insights in how you can just kind of run your business more functionally, more better for you.
I think that's beautiful advice. There have been so many times where I have done things and after I walk away from it, I say that didn't feel like an equal energy exchange. I actually kind of felt drained walking away from that, either because of the types of sessions that they were, and that just didn't really bring me like a whole lot of joy to focus on those things with people, or maybe I wasn't charging enough for those type of sessions or groups or meetings, and then we make adjustments
Yeah.
until it
Mhm.
feels like, oh yeah, that felt really good to do that. And then as you go up in your business and you start charging more, doing different types of events and things, it's okay to continuously make adjustments for
Absolutely.
your needs. You need to put
Absolutely.
your needs first. Okay. Yes.
Well, and also, that is going to just make you a more effective business person who is
Hmm.
also then accessing more people, and it will give you more insights into ways to also grow the business that do feed you. And
Hmm.
so, and that's just truly, that's the biggest privilege of running your own business, is that you're able to make those pivots without other people's inputs, and so that you can do the things that you enjoy for the amount of money that you think it's worth, and like all of that, like you have that empowerment. So yeah.
Absolutely. I did an event the other day and I really enjoyed it and it was really fun, but at the same time it took a lot of my energy. But it
Mhm.
went really well and everybody loved it and it was fantastic and fun. And they're like, when are you going to do another one? And my immediate thought was, okay, well, this was successful. So let's do another one. And I started thinking of like dates and all that. And I said, hold on, let's check in with our body first. Let's
Right.
take a breath, okay, and do like a debrief with self about how we are feeling.
Yeah.
And after I did that, I said, oh, you know what? This whole entire structure would need to be different for me
Yeah.
in order to
Yeah.
be a more effective channeler and to be uh, an even more expansive leader and to be
Yeah.
able to help people on a deeper level. We need to change the structure. But I had to check in with my body and my
Mhm.
feelings
Yeah.
to get the guidance to move forward.
Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
it's really important to kind of, the more you do get in touch with what channeling feels like, and then kind of getting into that flow state, and like you're almost like the one's own routine with it, right? Like, for example, I would never be able to do an event that was like 100 people, right? Like I wouldn't
Mhm.
read for that many people. And I personally, I can never do a reading that's like less than 5 minutes, because it takes me some time
Facts.
to get up to the person. So
Yeah.
it's like, even though we kind of, I usually am like, 5 to 10 minute readings, they're usually 10 to 15, because
Mhm.
that's how I naturally am. I naturally cannot make it faster, and I cannot have them. It's sort of like, I think of it
Gotta
as like,
close the loop.
yes, and it's like they kind of gotta like warm up and then open up to you, and
Uh-huh.
you've got something to work with, and then you give them stuff, and then that's when the channeling comes through of like, oh, here's some insights, or here's some guidance, here's how I'm weaving these things together, here's somebody to think about. Okay, now good luck. And it's like, and then like you said, closing the loop, making sure that they're okay and that you get them out of there. I cannot do that in 5 minutes
Mhm.
because of how I do readings. Now, there are other people that do readings much faster, that are a little less intuitively led with them, and they're using the cards more directly.
Mhm.
Can be faster with that because they're not receiving all this kind of like in between messaging that I add into it. Good for them, I wish. But I'm like, I just can't. And so therefore, if I can only do, let's say, 10 minutes comfortably for each person, I have to only accept events or set myself up for events where that's the case. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to set myself up for an event where I'm going to be reading for 45 people. It's just not going to happen. I can't do it. There's not enough time. You know?
Yes.
So
Yes.
so it's, the more you just kind of get in tune with what feels right, and like you said, more importantly, trying things out and then really seeing how you feel
Mhm.
afterwards without making a quick reaction of that was so fun, let me do it again and let me plan 10 more. Like really seeing how, if that played out exactly like it did again, do I need to make changes, et cetera, really tapping into yourself, because it's a weird balance of being energy worker and then business owner. Like it's a
Yeah.
very weird balance, and like there are decisions that you're going to have to make where you may want to do lots of fun energy stuff, but it is not the same money exchange. And if you need to have that money for your life, then you need to make decisions about what you do offer and how much.
Mhm. Yeah. We're
Mhm.
gonna take a short break so I can run to the bathroom.
Okay, yeah,
But I want
yeah.
to ask you a question before we
Yeah.
do that. Okay. Do you ever feel like you have to filter down or water down what people's higher selves are telling as advice to people? Because they'll be real sassy and curt sometimes. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna say this in a nicer manner.
Yeah, yeah. There's all kinds of stuff. So sometimes it's almost like gentle parenting, right? So
Yes.
like a gentler
Yeah.
message. And then sometimes I will also say, because I have honed this a little bit more, I do get really strong visuals of things that are metaphorically pretty heavy messages, right?
Yeah.
For example, I once saw sort of like a like shackles on someone's like throat chakra, right?
Mhm.
That's not something that I felt like my words describing to that person would be healing for them to see or hear.
Mhm.
So I utilized other words that explained that same restriction. And for me, it was very clear with the metaphor that was being presented exactly what was happening, but I felt like I was able to filter that for their benefit because it felt like using those words and the frequency of those words in this life was more harmful than the concept of the words themselves. And so that's one thing. But like a lot of times in card readings, stuff does come up. And I will say I'm a little bit gentle with it, but over the years, I have become much more confident in sharing the things that are coming through. And what usually happens, it would be funny for you to see if this happens for you too, but it's like, let's say there's like a phrase that like keeps coming through from like the higher self that like I'm supposed
Mhm.
to say, and I'm saying it in a really gentle way. That phrase is going nowhere and it's staying there until I find
You're like,
words
"We
that
won't let you see anything else until you say this to them exactly."
literally, oh, I just got chills as I said that. Literally. And they're like, no, 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 this
Yeah.
is what you're supposed to say in this way.
Yes.
And it's like, then when you say it in that way, it's a something for them, you know? And so there is trust in that. But again, it kind of goes back to what we were saying around like the human to human dynamic, where it's like you kind of want to really pick up on their energy. How are they feeling about things? Do they seem like they are energetically receptive to a big message, that kind of thing? And it might
Mhm.
be that you just need to wait a little bit longer in the session till they're a little bit more open to kind of give them like the final big packing message. Um, so I will say I was a little bit more filtered earlier. I'm a little bit more open now, but I do very much like gauge it based on how the person is doing. However, when something is super clear and not going away, that to me is a very clear indication of something that I have to verbally say that I'm supposed to share.
Oh, yeah, oftentimes that person's higher self or their guides will not let me see anything else until I say something very
Yeah.
specifically like that, and I'm like, "Okay." I
Yeah.
know.
And and we may think that it's a very difficult message for them
Right.
to
Sometimes
hear.
they need that, though.
And sometimes, yeah, and sometimes they're like, oh my God, that's literally the question that I asked, like
Yeah.
my guide yesterday, and you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm glad that you were open to it. So yeah, you kind of never know where people really are with it, but you do want to be cautious without like, you kind of just want to be tender and gentle,
Mhm.
as you're sort of starting it and like as you're also getting used to this process and used to working with other people. That's why I would encourage, especially if people are into card readings or even into just like sitting with someone and kind of receiving messages, doing it with someone that you're comfortable with so that you've already developed this comfort of communication and kind of like reading them and reading their energy. You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
that
yeah.
just it makes that practice a lot easier. Doing it with friends or family that you're comfortable with for sure makes it easier. So yeah.
I will also say too, before we take a break here, that I have found that, sometimes people are coming to you for very serious things and the vibe is a little somber. Not always, but sometimes I have found that being jovial and making people laugh right in the beginning, it really does help bring their walls and guards down and makes them feel a lot more comfortable and safe.
Yeah.
And so I try and make it really lighthearted and fun and like silly in the beginning when we're doing kind of our pre-talk.
Yeah.
It's so beneficial.
I like
People are like,
that.
okay, I can take a breath and
Yeah. That's
relax.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. Let's
Okay,
talk
yeah,
about
we'll
yeah,
take a
let's
break and
talk
then we'll
about
be
that.
right back. Hey, everybody, we are back and we are going to get into what has been your biggest challenge within channeling.
Yeah. So
Yes.
I want to talk about two things. So the first thing I want to talk about is trusting or channeling.
Oh, yeah.
And then the second thing I want to talk about is like the physical preparedness for channeling and like how to get
Mm,
into that. So first and second. So first is about trusting your channeling and like what is actually coming through. So this is where we've already done a lot of talk about how to get your body into a receptive space. And so one of the things that by clearing out the stuff that's in your body, it's much easier for you to recognize what feels like a resounding yes and what feels like a resounding no.
mhm.
And this is also something that you can practice outside of the concept of channeling. So thinking of like, what do I want for lunch, right? And like giving yourself just two options or even one option. And is it a yes or a no?
Mhm.
And what I was guided, and this has been helpful guidance through my own healing, was if it's not a hell yes, then if it's in any concept of a no, it's a no. And in thinking of it that way, of just a hell yes or any other no is a no, it gets you really fine-tuned into what feels like authentic yeses for yourself. And it could be as simple as choosing this coffee versus that coffee, or this
Mhm.
lunch versus that lunch. But then eventually it's this thought, right? Or it's this method, or it's this thing that I'm doing, or it's this job or like this business I'm going to launch, right?
Mhm.
Or and these services that I want to do and the price for those services and all of that. So I wanted to say that the more you can practice in very um easy ways to get yeses and nos, the clearer it then becomes when you're receiving channeled messages, to at the very beginning of it to check with yourself, is this a yes or a no? Is this coming through? And like, is this something that my conscious is creating as like a filler, right, in this
Mhm.
reading? Or is it that my imagination is kind of like coming through? Or is it something that feels like, yes, this is something I'm supposed to share? The more you just get practice with that, the easier it is, you know? So it's just like that. Similar to like, let's say painting, right? It's like there's no right way to make a painting. If I give you a canvas and I have a canvas, what we each create, there's no right or wrong way if there's
Mhm.
guidance, right? So it's more just like what feels right and what feels wrong. When do you feel like you're forcing yourself to do something that doesn't feel like it's flow? And so just checking into that flow state of like the yeses and what feels like a body yes, really, really important as it comes to channeling, because that's going to give you that inner confidence and that inner wisdom of the accuracy of things coming through. And then when you start working with other people, you also get that positive, like, feedback cycle, right? You say
Mhm.
something and they're like, yes, that actually means something to me. Great. And that just also gains your confidence, but you need the internal confidence because you're going to be using channeling for yourself more than you ever do for other people,
Yeah,
right? You know what I mean?
that's
Once you open
facts.
that door, it's for you. And if you want to share that light, you can, you know? And so that's the most important thing, is recognizing what are the internal yeses and what are the internal nos, and really just putting that into practice as it relates to channeling. So secondly is the readiness and getting your physical space and your physical body and your energetic bodies ready
Mhm.
for. And I wanted to talk about this because one of the most common things, at least for me, as it relates to deeper channeling, is getting knocked out of the state and then having to get yourself back into it, like
Yeah.
getting distracted or something happening.
Either
So
internally with your thoughts or externally with
yeah. Or
environment.
like, right, like,
Yeah.
like say you got something going on in your life and suddenly, those thoughts come swooshing on through. And so I wanted to talk about this more in that deeper level state, because it's a little bit more like getting yourself back on track with something
Mhm.
versus the earlier states of channeling, such as card reading and stuff. It's almost like it's a little fluffier. It's kind of just like filling in, kind of again, like sentence building with words that you're getting from the cards, versus in a deeper state where, let's say, it's mutual meditation, and like you and I both do, we're able to tap into energies in that, what is that, the theta brain wave state, like
Yeah.
the, yeah. That is where then you're getting information flowing to you, like full
Mhm.
information flowing to you. It's not from cards that
You're
you're
not
pulling.
piecing it together. It's like a whole story, a whole narrative, a depiction.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's not externally informed, right?
Mhm.
So, or is what we consider externally informed. It's not based on things that people are saying or giving to you. It's stuff that is coming through and
Mhm.
truly being channeled. And I just wanted to talk about the very real and reality aspect of the fact that you need to get yourself into that. And that when you do, if you get distracted, you'll get jumped off of it and you just got to get back into it. And so I wanted to talk about that because it's a very real process and practice. So, excuse me. We talked about meditation, active meditation, and getting into flow state. That's kind of that initial first, like alpha,
Yeah.
beta,
Like an alpha beta state.
alpha, beta, then theta. So alpha, beta, getting really practiced into that is perfect because it just allows you to recognize when you're kind of getting into that state. Breath work is one of the best ways. Meditation is the second, right? So it's like those two things together get people into it. You are not going to be getting into a theta brainwave state by physically doing something functional with your body.
Oh yeah,
Like,
you gotta be you gotta be still.
right.
You gotta be quiet.
Right. But like flow state, you can be painting, you can be cleaning, you can
Yeah.
be doing whatever. But when you want to get into full channeling, your body is still. And so that's a big portion of it. So one, physical safety,
Oh yeah.
in a place where you can feel physically safe, where you'll be undisturbed, where you feel safe to get into channeling. Like if somebody were, no one's going to walk in upon you. Dogs aren't going to bark because you also don't want to put yourself into trauma state out of the blue. You don't want to be
Yeah.
startled. I've learned those lessons. And so physical safety, physical quiet. And then a lot of times it's really helpful for people either like eye mask or headphones or something like that to even get even quieter. But so I wanted to say that. And then when you're in it, so for example, like, let's say kind of the things start coming through and a dog does bark or something falls off the shelf or whatever like that, and you are kind of startled out of it, doing the breath work and doing the breath work to kind of get yourself back status calm again is just how you get back into it. Think of it like a current of energy, and you just got to get back to that level again. And you get
Mm-hmm.
to that level by checking in on the body. I was startled. I'm now in a nervous system response. How do I'm active and I'm dysregulated. How do I regulate myself to get back into that space? And you can only get into it when you feel physically safe.
Yeah, and even just saying to yourself, "Oh yeah, remember we're safe."
We're safe. I look around at my surroundings and
Yeah.
then do some specific breath work. And so I wanted to talk about also just accessing that theta state because it is so different from the alpha beta.
Yeah.
So for me, I am quiet. I am in a specific part of my house where I know that I can just physically relax into it. That's the other thing. Make sure that you are comfortable. Make sure that you're wearing comfortable things. Like, especially for those of us that are like extra sensitive, the more you do this work, the more sensitive you become to things.
That's a fact. That is a fact.
So wear the things that feel comfortable, be in the place that feels comfortable. Make sure you have a glass of water near you, make sure the temperature's okay, the light's okay, because all of those are the things that as soon as you sit down, you're going to be aware of, right? Oh, the AC
Mm-hmm.
is too loud, right? Or like the lights are on and they're kind of in my eyes, even when my eyes are closed, or whatever it is, the window's open and I hear, traffic outside. So just recognize that sensory stimuli is super common to distract you and just reduce it as much as possible. And then once you really get into it, I feel the difference of, for me, it's almost because theta state is very similar to dream state. So for me, it is
Mm-hmm.
similar to when I am in dreams and everything is visual for me in my dream because I have clairvoyance. When I get into theta state, visualizations then come through at that point. Prior to the theta state, it's more like suggestions, ideas,
Mm-hmm.
um,
It's not like direct answers.
feelings. Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
definitely not as much visuals with my third eye or like with my eyes closed.
Mm-hmm.
Once I get into theta, I start getting visuals. And we'll talk a little bit about what I do with my with that
Yes.
in a little bit. But for me, because those visuals often begin with like being greeted by a guide, I'll get little blips here and there. Like I'll get the concept of an outline of something,
Mm-hmm.
or the concept of the energy of something. Maybe it's bird-like, right? Or maybe it's masculine, or maybe it's iridescent, right? Something like that, that I'm like, okay, I'm getting into it. Keep keep doing the breath work, keep getting further into it. And it really is like going down in a pool. Like you're
I was
like,
about to say it feels like I'm like dunking my head in the ocean and the density. Like that's what it feels like to
you
me.
feel the density. And
Yeah.
that's why it's really easy to pop your head right up. I'm getting full body chills as we're talking about this. So pool, I think water imagery is really helpful here for
Yeah.
people. But like alpha beta, you're in that flow state. You might be cleaning, you might be doing artsy, whatever,
Mm.
and then you pop out of
Floating
it.
on top of the
Yeah,
water, like there's a lot of
yeah,
environmental stuff going on. Like,
right.
yeah.
But like much like water, it is hard for us gravitationally to really stay under in that deeper
Yeah.
state where there's heavier gravity. And so, and I will say in this whole metaphorical concept, don't be worried that you're gonna drown and go like
Or
full,
there's a shark or
full ground
something
level
like that.
gravity. Yeah.
Right?
You'll always be able to come out. You'll always be able to come out.
Yes.
And you'll always be able to go back into it. But it's important to know that this is not like if you slip out of it, it's a failure. This is a channel and a current of energy that you are able to tap into and get back into. So just get back into it. It's no big deal. And it's really the practice of having to stay in it and being in it. And then once you're in there, more often than not, especially in that lower state, there's sort of a start and end. Like when you're kind of done, you know that you're sort of done,
Like the
and then you
loop
come up
closes.
out of it. Yeah. And so I also wanted to share that too, that it's like, unlike sort of staying in the flow state where you could kind of like live your entire life like that if you
Hmm.
wanted to, you're not going to live your entire life in the theta state. You'd be comatose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you have to, you're not talking, you're not looking, and you're in there, but it's for a finite portion of time for what it is that you're going in there for the insights that you want or the insights that you're supposed to have for yourself or for other people. So I just wanted to kind of share that like um, that physical readiness and knowing that you can slip into it and can slip out of it and go back into it through breath work,
Mhm.
through attention, and making sure that your physical space is safe, and also checking in on your body. Is your nervous system showing that you're in a fight or flight because you just got startled? Give yourself a few minutes, recognize that you can get yourself re-regulated. And so that's why body work is so important here, because you truly are the conduit. You are the conductive vessel for energy coming through. And if your stuff is not, if your anger or if your sadness or if your guilt, shame, or fear is very present, the stuff isn't going to be completely coming through, and you're not going to be able to kind of, it will block the easier ability for you to get into that theta state and then to stay there and to not have your stuff kind of come in and like filter in through there. So that's why it's all really connected. And that's why body work is so important before getting into really getting into channeling. Also, just a quick note is like when you are angry or if you are sad, that also is why you're not going to get like necessarily like signs or channeled messages and like that kind of
Mhm.
thing. I have so many people who have lost somebody that come to me and they're like, I haven't received any signs. And I was like, well, do you feel like, it could be like your anger or your grief? And like, when you're kind of clouded by that, you're just not going to see them, right? Like that
Yeah, it makes
energy,
filter lenses. Yeah.
100%. And usually once that's cleared, they then have a sign, like later that
Hmm.
day, because it's sort of like these things are just clouding all over us, and we just got to release them. So those are all the things I wanted to say about that.
No, I love that you brought that up. I will say too that when I first started doing deep meditation, it was not easy. Like it's a muscle. The more that you do it, the easier it is to get into that state. And now where I'm at with my channeling, I could be hopping off here and just blip into that. I could do it in my car. I could do it
Yeah.
at the park. I could it very, very, very quickly, even if there are external things
Yes.
going on. But that's because I have built that muscle. But in the beginning, it's I don't want to call it work. It's not work, but you have to invest time and energy into yourself and teaching yourself how to get to that state of being. And the
Yep.
more time and energy you put into it, the better at it you will become and the easier it gets. But it's a lot of initial work to be able to do that.
Because it's tapping into how you actually feel. I think it's very easy for energy workers and people that are called towards this to check in on everybody else, right? And know how they're all feeling. And this is all about self feeling. How are you feeling? Is there stuff that's in the way that you got to process? And then are you able to tap into it? Like you said, strengthening that muscle in that practice. Same. It's much easier for me to kind of like hop right into it. And then same, that's also why I'm able to do, let's say, events where I'm doing readings for people, because I am getting into that channeled state. I'm giving them very impactful messages, even in that 10 minutes, and I'm doing it person over person over person because I practiced it. And that's all. You know what I mean? And I've been doing card readings for other people for over 10 years. I've honed that specific skill so that internally I know what it feels like when I'm grabbing these messages that are for other people. So
I do. I would like to stress the importance of there is no workaround doing work on yourself. Like if you and people are like, well, how do I get into channeling? I'm like, healing yourself,
yeah.
regulating your central nervous system, looking at your PTSD and trauma, and processing your emotions. That is the answer. That is the key. Meditation is also
Yeah.
the answer, the key.
Yeah.
Uh, loving
Yeah.
yourself, holding boundaries in your life, like all of these things that we know, there is literally no workaround, and you will only become an advanced channeler the more advanced that you are with self. And so, yeah.
Exactly right. Yeah. That's it's 100% true. It's the capital W work, right? It's the and like, and the more you know yourself, the more you're clear on your own purpose and like what you're wanting to be doing with your time. I'm sure everybody watching this has service to others as part of what they are
Oh, yeah.
wanting, right? So like, those watching, that you want to help other people. And it's much easier wanting to go ahead and just start helping other people because you've probably already been doing that.
Mhm.
Um, what the hardest thing is directing that attention inward and helping yourself first. Partly because we're taught not to do that, especially
Oh,
as
yeah.
women or people who identify as women or raised as girls. A big part of our society is that. But in general, a big part of our society is not helping ourselves, regardless of gender or expression or orientation. And so it's like, if people are not taught to focus in on themselves and to just kind of like help outward, and especially if you're naturally inclined to be more energetically sensitive and a healer, it's so easy to fall into that. And like you said, you really have to go through this, not around it, not over it. This is the work, because this is also how you understand how to help other people, what they are
Hmm.
going
Yeah.
through and where they are on their journey. I mean, that's a big part of my spiritual awakening, and specifically the newer gifts that I have, was a result of major grief that I went through. I went through two really big losses in my life in kind of tragic ways and out of the blue. And I had to heal through grief in a way that I have never had to heal through it before. But now I'm prepared to be able to talk to people about death and
Yeah.
about incarnation and about grief and the grief journey and the healing journey in ways that I had never been able to before. And I wouldn't be able to do that if I had not actually gone through the healing myself, if I had just kind of blocked it off away. And so
Mhm.
it's very archetypical of healers to go through the very deep valleys so that you can get to the mountains, so that you can guide others through it too, so that you can say, you are in the valley and you are going onto this mountain. It will get better and it will improve, and you will see the clarity of where it is that you can go after this challenge. So, so
It's a trial by fire. I'm like, thank you for being so, incredibly strong to go through all these things so that you can be of service to others. Like, what a beautiful journey that you have put yourself on for, to do these things. So, thank you for all the healers that are out there that have chosen that path, because we know it is a tough
Right.
one. Okay.
And and I want to say too that I feel very purposeful in this life and in this incarnation for having the choice of being able to do this, because for so many generations there has not been the time, the space, or the education in
Mhm.
understanding what a self needs and how to heal. And so, I recognize that I'm the first of my generation that is doing this kind of self-healing work. And the reward is that I then get to be able to be in service for others.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, it's truly an honor. And it only comes from having done the work myself, and doing the work myself is also a privilege.
Mhm.
You know, so I recognize all of that, and like, I'm so grateful that I've been able to have that in this incarnation, because I know that I haven't had the time, the energy, the support, the privilege to be able to do that healing. And I know that now's the time. You know what I mean? Generation breakers, curse breakers, all of that. These are all happening for people because there is such a push right now for self-healing and for people to heal their stuff so that they are not perpetuating it through further generations. So,
Absolutely. That answered a little bit of my next question of why did you decide to get into channeling for other people?
yeah. Um, so, I'm sure my story is similar to others in the fact that once it starts, and if you're already naturally inclined to be doing things for and with other people, it's a quick, my thing was kind of like, I know I'm going to be doing something as a healer. I just don't know what,
Mhm.
and so, um, doing card readings was a really nice and easy like entrance into all of this for me,
Mhm.
because Card readings are, you can kind of like take or leave them, but when people have a card reading with me, they're like, oh, that was really impactful. But
Mhm.
from outside, I didn't feel as nervous about offering that as I do, or as I did the other things, like specifically the chakra clearings, because card reading was something that's known to the general
Yes.
society. You know what I mean? And people have the concept of, I could kind of like, be real or not real, and like I can
Mhm.
take it or leave it, or it's whatever. And so for me, that was a very, I don't know, like easy way to just entrance and access into this concept of getting some channeled messages from other people and practicing it in a really like safe and controlled environment. And like them giving that positive feedback loop was really healthy in
Mhm.
me practicing this concept. And then again, I was managing a lot of people. And so in those management in me, I it was almost like I was their therapist, like I loved managing people. It was one of my favorite parts of being a people manager, was having those one-on-ones and guiding them. And that's where I was able to start practicing it a little bit more. But then when things came full throttle was about 2 years ago. And that's when I started seeing like a lot of stuff happened. So
Mhm.
2 years ago was the second loss that I received. That was my stepsister who passed, and everything was happening in conjunction. And so this is where, while my story is a little bit unique, I think it's quite similar to a lot of other healers, where like something happens. It's like the fool's journey, right? Like you
Yeah.
have the thing that happens, and then you have the lessons and the arc that you go through. And the lessons and arc that I was going through is that I was receiving a lot of gifts while I was going through grief healing. And those gifts were specifically clairvoyance, stronger clairvoyance, and then also I've always had hot hands. I've
Mhm.
always had very old looking hands. I've got lots of lines on my hands. And so growing up, I was always told that I had like an old soul and I got like healer hands and that kind of thing. Through the spiritual awakening and through the grief journey and through all of these gift receivings, my hands got even stronger. And so
Mhm.
they emit a lot of heat, but I also am able to pick up energy with them, like placing them either hands over or hands on people. And so all of these things were happening all at the same time. So when I was laying hands on people, I was starting to get visuals. And when I
Mhm.
was looking from people, I was getting visuals and I was seeing things. I was then getting downloads. And so this was kind of, talk about trial by fire. Like this is when I was just getting like boom, 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 insights, synchronicities, downloads. I was getting information about other people's stuff. And I will say I was cautious to not be reckless with the information I was getting, but it was all happening so fast with so much information and force that there was a little less discernment at that time than I have now. I have more control. And so at the time, I was like getting all this stuff, and it was like I almost got like thrown into channeling for people because I was starting to see things and I was picking things up, and people wanted it because they were on their own healing journey too.
Mhm.
It was during this that I then was able to hone more, working more one-on-one with people and getting into that meditative state and actually seeing the things that I then am now able to see in that theta state, which is like energy armor and shields. And then I'm able to see other visualizations, such as like the chakras presenting as objects. And that's when it was 2 years ago that all of this started, and I've now honed it. But that's where I started getting all these visuals and these insights into how people's energy is presenting to me, and I'm able to share that with them. And again, positive feedback loop. They were like, yes, that makes a lot of sense. And
Mhm.
like what you're seeing totally resounds. And like it was then that I got more confident in the concept of channeling information on behalf of others and getting information that human Molly would not have access to, right? This is definitely channeled information. And so at that point, it was a lot of information. It was a little uncontrolled, and it was a little bit hard for me. I was fully ungrounded. I would even say that time,
That was me in the beginning too.
yeah, and I would even say I was going through some spiritual psychosis because one of the best things I read about spiritual psychosis was from the Akashic Records book by Linda Howe. Highly recommend. Great beginner's guide. Highly, highly, highly. The Beginner's Guide to Akashic Records, I think it's called,
Yeah.
and it's Linda Howe, Howe. Highly recommend. In it, she had a single sentence that said, like shamanic journeyers that are getting into Akashic records, or maybe it was Beginner's Guide to Shamanic Journeying. It doesn't matter. But the sentence that
The Linda
resounded.
Howe book is still good though. Do get that
Yeah,
book.
go, yeah. Take
Okay.
that. But she said that those that are accessing the Akashic records and going into the journey, that have practiced it, know how to access the non-physical reality.
Hmm.
Those that navigate between our reality and non-physical reality without understanding which reality are in is considered psychosis. And I was
Yes.
like, well, holy hell, if that wasn't a perfect explanation of what I was going through 2 years ago, where I was having just all these visualizations and downloads and all these kind of like messages and signs and like all these things. But I was also traveling, I was healing, I was going through all kinds of traumas, personal, relationship, romantic, loss, grief, all these things that were all happening all at once. And I was like, I was the most ungrounded I've ever been because I was going through some sort of catalyst.
Mhm.
Now, 2 years later, I've gotten myself into a routine and practice where I know how to ground. I know when I'm accessing non-physical reality. I know when I'm in physical reality. I'm able to navigate between those very comfortably. I now have that ability to do that. But I want to share that because it's so common when you kind of get thrown into the spiritual awakening process that things are just coming at you in all these different directions. And my biggest guidance is tap into the body, know how to regulate the body. Those are going to be the biggest lessons that will then take you through into honing your craft. But like taking care of your mental wellness and taking care of your
Mhm.
is the absolute critical because this is what's actually still going through all of these things, and like this eventually will figure itself out. And so I just wanted to share that because I wasn't having as much, I would say, control over channeling for other people or even the intention of wanting to do it while it was happening and while I was getting the gifts. And then I was able to hone that a little bit further. And so I then did more one-on-one sessions and I was able to almost like set up a routine and like structure in how I was doing
Funnel
things.
the thing instead of it just being like the wild, wild
Instead of
west.
it's everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because what was
Yeah.
happening is like my friends who were kind of going through stuff too, we would just be sitting down at a table and then it's like synchronicity,
Mhm.
download and insight. And you're just like, whoa. And there's a, what do you call it? With great power comes great responsibility. There's a lot of power in giving people insights and information. There's a lot of responsibility because you don't want to be their only way to get insights about themselves. You want to be a guide and a helper, and you do not want them to be dependent upon you. That's where toxicity and really imbalance of energy comes through.
Mhm.
Um, they should be getting information for themselves. And so, it's very easy when you're first getting into it and kind of trying to understand what these gifts are to sort of have lack of boundaries because you're still figuring out exactly what's happening and what's safe to do with other people. Eventually, you'll kind of figure out what the yeses are, what the nos are, what feels appropriate with boundaries, and also kind of how to keep yourself and your energy safe. And it just takes practice and it takes intentionality and not being reckless with your gifts and with other people's kind of like emotions with your gifts.
It is a big responsibility. It's like you're
Major.
putting somebody's whole soul in your hands. And I know that sounds kind of like daunting to some people and that scares some people to get into the work, but at the same time, it can be the most fulfilling
Oh, it's
and
overwhelming.
the most beneficial for people. But that's also why we've been stating the importance of taking care of yourself, either physical body, your mental health, grounding, also continuing to work on your own tools and resources to help other people. This is a continuing education thing
Yes, always.
forever. You have to be committed to continuing education, whether that means you healing yourself or you taking courses or you watching videos on YouTube, whatever that is, like you need to continue to do that.
Yeah. And I kind of want to bring this up too, because the people watching this will most likely be offering services to other
Mhm.
people. In recognizing, working with other people and kind of like appropriate boundaries there and just kind of picking up on things. Something I wanted to mention that I'm sure that you deal with as well. Being a card reader specifically, but also the energy, the chakra clearings and other energetic work in that way. I would say, but more card readers, a lot of times you get people that are very desperate. You get people that are very desperate for information or kind of
Mhm.
in an energy of despair. And it was very easy for me to see once I started my business and I offered that as a service, the people like how others with ill will or wanting to sort of like scam would easily take
Oh,
advantage.
prey on people. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
for sure.
because people are coming to you wanting help, and sometimes it is from this effort of despair and desperation and wanting to get maybe a sign from someone who passed, right? Or insight into why they're going through a certain trauma that they're going
Mhm.
through. And so I just want to it's very few and far between now the people that are coming to me that are of that energy.
Yeah.
It's almost never, because more often than not, I'm working with people that are like us, that are kind of already on the track in some way and want some kind of guidance and nudges in a certain way. And that, of course, is 100% my resonation. That's exactly who I'm trying to resonate to me. That's exactly who I want to be working with, because I'm your teacher for a little bit and then you move on
Mhm.
and you have other teachers and that's how it goes. I am not the one person that's going to give you all the answers and solve this one like heartbreak for you, right? Or this one grief thing for you. And so I just wanted to share that too, that like the people that are coming for help, you will have a small percentage of those that don't want, that are not ready to do any work of their own, you know, and they just want to get insights and guidance from you. Those are not the kind of clients that you want to have, because those are the ones that are trying to just get energy and insights from you without doing their own work. You want the ones that are doing some of their own work so that you can facilitate them through their work.
Yeah, sometimes people have to have their own aha moments and have to get themselves out of their own holes. Like I've had to be that person. Like I've had
Yeah,
to, you know, there's nobody anything could say to me. It's realizations that I had to do and work that I had to
that's
out.
everybody. We're
And
supposed to work through our own
yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
you know
yeah,
what I mean? So,
I
you know, like I'm always
do.
saying, like, it's okay to also tell people, no, it's okay
Yeah.
to say, I don't do this type of work.
Yeah. Like I had a woman who we had a really beautiful reading and then she's like, I want to come see you every week. And I was like, no, like I don't do that. I'm not going to do a
Yeah.
reading for you. If you feel like you need that, let me teach you how to read your own cards, because that's going to be teaching you how to fish. I'm not here to give you a fish every week. You know what I mean? I'm like, that's not what I am here to do. And it shouldn't be what anybody is here to do, because everyone should work towards figuring out how to get this information for themselves if they want it. Most people want it, so like
Yeah.
so anyway, I kind of wanted to just flag that, because especially as guiding new practitioners, it's really common for especially very early on, and especially if you are doing things like
Yeah.
card readings, for people to really kind of have that sort of despair, right? Like they're really looking for it and you want to help. That's what you're built for, is to be a helper and a healer, and using that discernment to recognize kind of where the person on the other side might not necessarily be able to take that and like work with it. So anyway.
I do. When I do individual sessions, typically not that I'm doing more work in those, but there's more transmutation and alchemization. And then when I have mentorship programs, I'm very selective about who is in those mentorship programs, because I actually do less work
Yeah.
in those with people, and it's more so about helping you figure out how to be your own shaman and
Right.
priestess and healer.
Right.
So it's going to be more me taking more of a backseat and being
Hmm.
a facilitator for you to learn how to see yourself in a different perspective. And
Right.
so we can still do larger things like that, mentorships and things of that nature, but it doesn't need to be you holding their hand like a toddler the whole entire way through. We need to be getting
Right.
these persons to a place of sovereignty.
That's right. Yeah. It's more
It's
like
okay.
it's
It's
more
okay.
like a teacher looking at a little group of toddlers that are all kind of
Yes.
doing their thing. You go to help when you need to, but you can also step back and let them do their thing,
Yes.
so that they can learn in a safe space.
Yeah.
100%. Just kind of, keep those things in mind and like keep that trust your intuition when you're working with somebody and kind of the energy that they're presenting to you. If it's one of openness, willingness, and one of learning, that's beautiful. You can facilitate that as long as you want to. If it's one of desperation and looking for answers because they cannot go inwards, caution,
Absolutely. Yeah,
just caution.
absolutely. Or if people just want band-aids put on things temporarily, it's like, I'm just going to
100%.
reiterate the same message. You need to ground, you need to heal your central nervous system, you
Yeah,
need to do all these like basic necessity things.
yeah.
Yes.
And the last thing I'll say here, kind of just as a business person, considering who your audience is as a healer and as an energy worker,
Mhm.
it's okay to have a concept of who your audience is and recognizing that there are people within or that are excluded from that. So, for example, let's say your audience is people, for me, that have been doing some work and want some guidance. That's excluding people who have done no work on themselves. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's for me a very okay audience. When I first kind of got into this, I felt a very strong calling to want to be able to talk to everybody, including complete beginners that are just
Same.
getting. And I think that that's super normal, right?
Mhm.
As I've grown, much like I kind of often think of the learner teacher as like in a healthy educational system. And it's like now I'm no longer teaching, hundreds of children. I'm teaching let's say teenagers in smaller classes, right? Or I'm getting into college programs and it's like, even it's one-on-one stuff, and it's like you said with mentorships, it's like longer term with with developed
Mhm.
intentional relationships to grow these other people that are going to be teachers themselves. And that's just a very normal progression to go through. Last thing I'll say about this is that as we are going through this, there's always going to be times when you are both a teacher and a student. Just keep that in mind and see where there may be an imbalance. Are you teaching more than you're learning? Are you learning more than you're teaching? Do you need to make an adjustment? There's always going to be times when you're both of them, and you want to have a pretty good balance of that. And you kind of want to see where you want to go with both of those things. Where you want to be learning more? Is there any place that you want to be teaching people? Because that's kind of a big part of the archetype as you kind of go through the evolution of it. So
Absolutely. I love that. There's times where I was a student of people pleasing, and then I switched over to, okay, now it's time to teach people about this. Once you learn
yeah.
how to graduate within that, within yourself. Yeah. So
People
it's checking
pleasing, people
balances.
pleasing is tough. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm a recovered people pleaser, recovered codependent. I think it's really easy for healers to fall into people pleasing. Again, society really pushes that. Um,
Mhm.
and then it's also really easy to put other people's needs before your own, especially if those people are mouthy about their needs, right? So like it's very easy to do that. And it's really easy to lose yourself in it. So, it's a very common thing. If you resonate to that, just recognize that the more internal focus that you can give yourself, the more internal healing that you can give yourself, the better leader that you can be for other people. And getting them out of that habit of people pleasing where they put other people's needs before their own. Always the oxygen mask metaphor. You gotta put that oxygen on
Mhm.
before you help somebody else. If you don't, you're not going to be able to. So,
Absolutely. So before we get to our last question here, I'm going to ask another question of what type of animal do you think would give the best life advice?
that's such a good question. Hmm. Immediately, the ones coming to mind was either like an elephant or a turtle, where it's kind of like they're very, um, but I feel like I need to choose one. I'm gonna say elephant.
Okay.
Though the only reason I was gonna say turtle is because they live so long, so they clearly have got good life advice
Yeah.
in quite long lives.
The experience.
Um, But I have to give so much of my honor. Elephants have always been one of my favorite animals, and the more I learn about them, the more beautiful they are. They're extremely communal. They're very spiritual and sensitive. They're very familial and
Mhm.
they're young. And I love that. And like they're also nomadic, right? And so they move as groups. And they're gentle for being as large as they are. So
Mhm.
I think there's I think there's a ton of lessons that we can learn from elephants, and I think that they would give us very good life advice, specifically because turtles aren't communal in that way. You know what I
Right.
mean? They go lay their eggs and
Kind
they're
of the
like,
same.
good
Yeah,
luck,
I don't think.
you know? Um, and it's like those babies, that's a tough life, but
Yeah.
elephants, they're very nurturing and cared for. And so I would say elephants. That's my
Beautiful.
choice.
Love.
Yeah.
And y'all let us know in the comments too, what type of animal would be the best comedian and what kind of animal would give the best life advice. We would love to hear
I love
what your
that.
thoughts
This is
are.
so cute. These are such fun icebreakers. I love
Yay.
that.
Okay, so I would love to hear what your offerings are for other people.
Yes,
your business?
100%. Yeah. And I'll talk a little bit about the channeling that I do for each. So, I really have three primary offerings. So it is Reiki, it is readings, and it is chakra clearings. And so I'll
Hmm.
get it. So readings, we've already talked a lot about how I kind of get into, I would say like alpha beta state when I'm doing readings, then it kind of fills in with some good channeled messages there. There, I get really clear sentences. I get very clear messages to then share and like disseminate, which is really interesting. It's always very fun. It's a much more lighthearted experience when I'm finished with with a card reading. I don't usually feel super weighed down. And it's really enjoyable. So I do readings, I do 30-minute and hour-long card readings virtually and in person, and I also do events where I do those. So you
Hmm.
can also like book me for an event, and I like go and do that like at a bachelorette party or at a dinner party
Oh,
or
how
something.
fun at a bachelorette party.
Yeah. I'm really trying to get into weddings. So I really want to do readings at weddings, and elopements and like that kind of thing. So, and then Reiki, I shockingly started doing Reiki virtually before I got officially trained in Reiki. Um,
Hmm.
and so then I finally got trained. And so I do both hands-on in person. I'm here in Baltimore, Maryland. And then I also do Reiki virtually. So I started doing Reiki virtually, really tapping into, um, which I assume we could honestly call channeled information, because I was able to kind of close my eyes, and I started the first virtual Reiki session with a friend of mine who was in Seattle, and she was just driving her car, and I was able to see a full outline of her whole body and then just move my hands like a hologram. If I like
Oh,
closed
wow.
my eyes, it was like she was standing in front of me,
Yeah.
and I was able to move my hands over the body. And as I got to one part of her, which was her lower left abdomen, I felt a cold spot. And then I like moved my hand around it, and it was still cold here, over here, not cold, cold here. And so I shared that with her. And it turns out she had taken a shot right from the refrigerator for a autoimmune disease that she has. She took it like right in that
Oh,
same
wow.
from the
Okay.
fridge the day before. And I was like, that's funny. And she was like, yeah, but they said that I could take it room temperature or from the refrigerator. I was like, I
Yeah.
think it was a guidance to take it room temperature, because it's like coming up and showing up that it's
Yeah.
cold, not fully integrating. And so that happened as I was getting those other gifts as well. So I just like automatically had the concept that I would be able to connect in with people's energies, and then um like receive information about it. It was later that I was then able to like do stuff, like
Hmm.
manipulate their energy, help clear it like I would if I was doing in-person Reiki. So I do virtual Reiki, I do in-person, and virtual Reiki is definitely getting into sort of like a mutual meditation and being able to see kind of a hologram of their body and see where energy is stored and like release that. Excuse me. And for that, I would say that's probably more like beta theta is kind of
Hmm.
where I. And then lastly, what I have honed over the last 2 years is a completely unique offering. Similar, thank goodness I found you, Sage, because you're the first person that was doing something similar to what I was doing. And I was like, oh my God, finally someone's doing something that's like what I'm doing. And I
It's
don't
so
even,
much easier when you have somebody to like be
oh
like,
my
okay,
God.
this is kind of
Yes.
what I'm doing.
I'm like, what are the words I should be using? What is it that
Yeah.
I'm doing, right? So over time, what had developed is that I was able to use that clairvoyance and that meditative theta state to tap into people's energies. And what I call it now is the energetic chakra clearing. And that is $250. I recently reduced the price of that so that I could do more of it, because I was
Hmm.
to do that in a channeled message session where it was like, this is my art. This is how I express my energetic abilities. And I just need to do more of it to
Like you're
continue.
getting so much back from it at the same time. So that's why.
Oh, and
Right. Yeah.
it is so
Yeah.
beautiful. So I'll explain it. So I'm able to, whether it's virtual or in person, I put on like little spa music, and the person just kind of relaxes for about like 45 minutes, 35 to 45. And I'm able to get into the theta brain state on my side. And I first am usually greeted by a guide that is kind of allowing me to begin the process. For those familiar with Akashic Records, if you're with Sage, you're familiar with Akashic Records. And so this is very much, I now realize, a process that is happening within the Akashic Records. And this
Hmm.
is healing of their physical body, their energetic body. I give a little bit of soul healing, and then we go through the specific 7 chakras. And so I'm first greeted by a guide. And then usually I like go through a gate, much like the Akashic records of some kind. We're like in a space. And then I'm able to work with the person directly, and I see their body split into 3. So that they have their physical body, which kind of looks just like them. They have a sort of see-through transparent holographic, which is their energetic body. That's where I get into the chakras. And then their soul is the third thing that kind of comes out as like a little wispy, sparkly thing. And that goes into just a healing bath that I have within the like astral plane. The physical body, I'm then able to scan and see any physical tensions. And we release that just like I do virtual Reiki. And then I get into the energetic body, and that's where I can see the 7 primary chakras represented as objects that show how the energy is flowing or blocked. And then from there, we then work with the higher selves and clear those to allow the energy to flow more cleanly through all 7 of those. Usually, what happens is there's a change in the chakra. Sometimes I'm not supposed to do anything to it. Sometimes it's good to go and it's like healthy and I don't have to do anything. Sometimes it's their work that is supposed to happen
Mm.
for that, and it is not for me to do. But usually there's always some sort of healing in general around all of them. And so I see the crown represented often as like something that it could be. Often I see like a big swirl, almost like a
Mm.
shell. I've seen crowns. Third eye, I always see as like a gem or an eye of some kind. The throat is always interesting. I recently saw someone that had a cornucopia.
Oh,
So
okay.
and that was representative of only external service with her throat chakra.
Mm.
So it was about fixing that so it wasn't so much of a bounty for others
Yeah.
because it closed on the end like a cornucopia. And so we had to like change that and clear it out. Heart space, I often see, I'll just kind of go through each one real quick. Heart space, I often see as like a terrarium or a world. I see water imagery often in the heart space, a beach scene sometimes. Solar plexus, always like something like a sun, something solary. Sacral, egg imagery, snake imagery often.
Mhm.
Very interesting in energy within the sacral. I think that as a global consciousness, we are working through releasing stuff within our sacral in general.
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot of sort of like divine feminine awakening that's happening from the release of the sacral energy in general. And I'm always very cautious with that because a lot of times that's where a lot of deeper trauma stuff that needs to be released for that person from that person is stored.
Yeah.
Not that they created the trauma, but like that they are the ones to create the healing for it for themselves.
Mm.
So I'm very cautious with the sacral. That's also where for women, that's where our wombs are. And then are those that are feminine, female
Mm.
born.
Identifying, yeah, or female
Yeah,
presenting. Yes.
yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Or yeah, have the parts of that. And then lastly is the root chakra, and usually that comes through as either plant roots or like lightning roots. And so and if they sort of stop halfway down the leg, that lets me know that it like needs to be cleared out some more. And so often we then go right back up to the top, and then what happens is it's not me manipulating the object, it is the object shifting itself through this session, through this healing session. It's kind of like our higher selves are working together and giving me information. So it's presenting me with how this is shifting. And I say that because a lot of times I'm like shown something and I'm like, okay, and I like turn it around, move it, see if I'm supposed to dissolve it, whatever. And it's like nothing will change. And I'm like, okay, let me just relax a little bit and see
Mm.
kind of like what they do for me. And then it then shifts for me. So it's about me observing, not manipulating anyone's energy. And then once that's all done, we then make sure everything is clearing. And then we take a look at the energy armor, where shield is what I call it, which is sort of your energetic barrier to the world. We create something new. And then much like work in the Akashic records, once you're done, you're done. And I
Yes.
am quickly escorted out, the doors close, and they're like, thank you so much for your service and
Yeah, yeah.
goodbye. So, and then I wake the person up and we go through all the things that happen. And so it's just a really, I'm so proud and I'm so honored to be able to do this work because for so long I was like, I don't exactly know how I'm doing this or what I'm doing or like Or am I doing something that other cultures or religions have a very clear idea of, and I'm kind of tapping into it and I need to learn more? And what I've learned is that I'm not exactly doing exactly the same thing that other cultures or religions are
Mhm.
doing. And so I've been able to develop that and kind of release those fears and those structures of feeling like I need to be doing it right by other people's guidance, and being able to, the guidance that I received is, this is my art. There's no right way to do art. You don't go to a guru to understand how to do art. You also don't force yourself to learn pointillism when you're an abstract painter.
Mm.
So it's like there were these lessons of like, you don't need to put yourself through these rigors and controls when you are doing something that's unique, you know? And
Mhm.
so I'm so proud to be able to offer this. And it's very peripheral within Akashic work, within chakra work, within energy healing, within overall holistic energy healing. And so that is the chakra clearing work that I do.
I will say that I have had a chakra clearing with Molly, and it was life changing because you are supporting on so many different levels with inner child stuff, with different types of trauma and PTSD, things that are going on the human plane, but then also things that have happened with your etheric and your astral body through multitudes of different incarnations, and are able to weave all of that information together. And how cool is it to see your chakras as objects and have that reflected back? It's
Yeah.
such an intuitive, unique guidance. Your sessions are so different and so special. And I had such a big emotional release as well, which we can all use that, right? But a lot of times mine will kind of build and build and build. And then I'll go see another energy healer to help me do like a really big clearing and release, not just with the human stuff that I have going on, but things that are much deeper in my Akasha field as well. And after I had the session with you, I was able to see with so much more precision and clarity, not only for myself, but for my clients. Like it really helped everyone who was in my community and collective, whether it's in one-on-one sessions or just sharing generalized messages with other people on my social medias, so much more clearer and crisp and such more depth to them because you were able to do that for me. So I'm very honored that I was able to receive that. And I 1,000,000%, a billion percent recommend going to get a session from Molly because it really was life changing. It was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm honored to do it. And I will say my favorite is to work with healers. Because truly, if I were to put a single sentence of what I think my purpose here is, it's to help heal and teach other healers to learn how to heal and teach. Like it is, that is my goal. And I would have originally said it's to help healers heal because I felt like that was my purpose, but I also have gained in this human experience a lot of knowledge and how to teach people and how to help people be teachers.
Mhm.
And I've now learned more about kind of like the concept of like the global consciousness oneness, and that it's like we are supposed to be learners and teachers. So
Mhm.
I'm now blending that together. The healer and teacher archetype I see as like my primary audience. And like there's truly, if money was never a concept, I would be doing all of this work for healers, because that is how we will grow as a society, is that you have
Mhm.
people empowered to heal themselves and to help others heal, and for those others that they're helping to then heal themselves and to help others heal, and that is the web. And so thank you. I'm honored to do it. And truly, you were the first person that I was all on TikTok, all like consuming for a full year before I started posting, and then posting for probably about a year before I met you, maybe about 6 months. And when there was a video I came upon yours, and you were talking about energy and chakras, and I was like, oh my God, finally somebody who
I
is
was like,
doing
oh, this is somebody
something
gets what I'm
similar.
doing.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I'm like, these are the words, and this is the information. And like, thank goodness. Because I will say, just like you said, you go to other healers. One, please know, for everyone listening and watching this, it is so okay and encouraged to go to other healers, because, and recognize when you
Yes.
don't need you, right? Recognize when you can use your own gifts on yourself. But
Mhm.
it is only going through other healers myself that my stuff has also unlocked. Like I've gotten myself to a point, and then they helped me. And then I got to another point, and then they helped me. They're like my Sherpas on this very high mountain,
Mhm.
right? And so, you know, you need that sometimes. You need that nudge because these other healers have reached a specific frequency that you're trying to get to. And if you, through all of your skills and tools, cannot get that yourself, they can help you get there
Mm, 1,000,000%.
holding that frequency, right? And so it goes back to the fact that you and I have done a lot of our own capital W work. We have released these frequencies, these fears of imposter syndrome, these fears of scarcity mindset. We hold the frequency without those fears. Therefore, others that have them can come to us to release
Mm-hmm.
them. You know, and similarly all the way around, inner wisdom and da da da, right? But I'm not at the top here. I go to other people as well that
Mm-hmm.
help me, and they then also will come to me, you know?
Oh
So
yeah.
it's about us holding down our hands to help each other up and then reaching out our hands to get helped up. It's like it's a full web of us all getting connected. So do know that it is one, it's definitely not a downfall to go to other healers. And then two, also recognize when you may be doing it too much. And you may need
Yeah.
to actually take a step back and like see what kind of things that you can do just for yourself. It's very easy to kind of I went through a period where I was seeing lots of people about like every 2 weeks I was
Readers,
like,
healers, all that.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I was also trying to figure out what are their gifts, right? What are their gifts that they can see from
Mm.
me? So what are they offering and how much money? And then what am I offering and how much money? And so it was a little bit of helpful kind of business research.
Comparing, contrasting.
Yeah, you know, and it
Yeah.
made me confident in setting my own prices. And it also helped heal some things to give me clarity. And it also gave me clarity that I was doing some things that other people weren't doing, you know? So it was all very helpful, but that's just kind of my guidance for people kind of getting into this, that you can absolutely rely on other healers and also rely on yourself.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I was very much in a place where I was stuck, where I had topped at the level, like I just hit a plateau. And one of the reasons is because there's things that I needed to release, like for me personally, within my Akasha field and with my inner children. But as a healer for other people, I also accumulate all of this weight on me
Yeah.
from doing sessions with other people. And sometimes I cannot clear that. Like I can clear it sometimes on a physical level, but on an etheric astral level, it's just weighing and bogging me down. And I need to go to another healer to do a big D-shed.
Yeah. 100%.
Yes. And so if that's you
Yeah.
right now and you need a big D-shed and you're ready
Yeah.
to get to that next level and out of that plateau, do that. But then you also don't have to be a professional healer to go see Molly either. Like that's for
No.
anybody and everyone. Like that one,
Everybody in
that's
a
doing the work.
It's doing the work and all the community. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I love offering readings, Reiki, and chakra clearing separately, is because they're kind of for the different levels, right?
Oh
If you're
yeah.
a beginner, go for a reading, go for Reiki. We don't have to get into anything super crazy deep, right? And I wouldn't recommend for a complete beginner to get into the chakra
Right.
clearing. You're not ready for it, you know? But for the people who've been doing some of their own work, they are ready for that. And so those are the people that resonate to me that are like, I've done some work, I've done some review, I kind of want to see what's getting stuck. That's my sweet spot. That's where I love to really help people get unstuck. And I think of it kind of like the message I was getting was sort of like, imagine you're an athlete and you do as much like both working out and as stretching as you can. You still go to somebody else to get a massage. There's still other people that can
Mm-hmm.
like right up in there that you
Yep.
can't get, right? And it's like that's just energy movement that someone else can facilitate for you. This is just energy movement that someone else can facilitate for you, you know? So yeah,
This
so
is
this
nice to let somebody else do it to work for you
yeah.
instead of you always doing it on yourself.
Yeah, and give yourself a little bit of a break, you know, and see what's going on. So, you know, and I feel like with card readings, a lot of people are kind of like open to that. With Reiki, once people are interested in Reiki, they will find you for Reiki.
Yeah.
For the chakra clearings, I feel the same way too. It's like I feel like I'm going to resonate to the right people that are looking for that specific kind of healing at that time and are ready for it, you know. And I reduced my prices specifically so it can be more applicable for people because I want to have more practice in it and I want to gift this away. And I was guided to do that. So,
That is beautiful. Beautiful. Where can everybody find you in your website,
yes,
your socials?
yes, on my socials, on my website. So it's RN, the letter N, RNR with mollyb.com. You can find me at RNR with Molly B. And so I have the 30-minute reading, the hour-long reading, and then I have hour-long Reiki, and then the hour and a half chakra clearings.
Yep.
And then I do a couple other stuff too. So, and I also do, if you're interested in setting up your own training programs or curriculum programs, I also do coaching for that as well. And so you'll see that too. So I'm trying to really help the healers that want to be teachers. I also want to really help facilitate that specific like bridge for them to get their programs kind of, you know, structured and set up for them. So if you have an idea of ways that you want to teach other people, I also offer guidance on that too.
Well, let's take a minute to talk about that for a second because I wasn't sure if you were going to bring it up or not. So let's talk about that for a second. So I have a program called the Quantum Evolution Academy, and Molly was a fundamental key piece in helping me put that together. It is a very, very large program, and my thoughts were all over the place. And the way that I had this outlined and the direction that I was taking it, you really helped me flush everything out in a very precise, easy to understand manner that was going to be very easy for the students to receive and to work through. And it brought me so much peace having somebody else who is in the spiritual realms who gets and understands what I was doing,
Yeah.
was knowledgeable and wise about the things that I was doing. So you knew how to put it in order for it to be best received by persons and to make it easier on me. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You're
Thank
like,
you.
hey, let's do this so it's easier for you as well. But it just made the process seamless. And that program is running so smooth, and you are a huge facet to that. So if there's anybody that wants to figure out how to put master classes, courses, mentorship programs together, please go see Molly, because it was just such a beautiful process to work with you, first of all, because you're hilarious and funny and so sweet and so intelligent, but also my
Make it
students,
easy.
yeah,
Yeah.
and my students have just gleaned so much from the way that the program is structured.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they
Good.
mention that all the time, like, oh, this is so like easy to understand. So
Yes.
so
Yes. Yes.
thank you for taking my ideas and funneling it for me. Much easier process. So thank you.
I'm
And I
honored.
recommend going to see Molly for your
Thank you.
programs.
Yeah. Yeah. I had multiple, many years in my corporate world, in the tech world, where I was guiding businesses on how to create their e-learning programs. And it was all about training brand new customers on how to use software. So similarly, it's like you kind of have to go through a very like easy ramp up when you're trying to teach somebody new behaviors. Similarly with like spiritual access, right? Like you kind of need to apply those same sort of concepts of like getting them early like information and tidbits that they can kind of consume and digest before you get into bigger stuff, especially when in this case the bigger stuff is not learning harder software, it's going through your freaking childhood trauma, and it's going through, you know, like okay, like your current trauma and all
Yeah.
of that stuff and processing it and releasing it, you know. So I love this, and I'm really excited to be growing more of this. I've now helped a few different programs launch, and it's such a fun like blending of my understanding of things that I've had to kind of learn on my own in isolation through the spiritual journey, and then learning how to actually put like curriculums together and being able to actually blend those, because again, helping healers become teachers is so purpose driven for me right now. And when you are a natural healer, that doesn't mean that you have background in structuring curriculums, right? Or
Right.
understanding of how people consume stuff and digest it, and the kind of, you know, support that you then need to give them through that process. One of the biggest things that we talked about was like length of time. How do you support the people? What is the feedback loop? How much of yourself are you giving, and how much are you charging for it, right? Like, what is that balance? Because it's also really easy when you're a healer and you also want to be a teacher to just give 100% of
Mhm.
yourself, right? Not charge a lot, be there 100, like 24/7 for them, give them way more than you're getting back because you're figuring it out. And that was a a big part of like what we were talking about, is kind of like, you don't need to kind of like give everything at the very beginning. Let's pull back and make this a sustainable program that you would be able to repeat, you know? So I love getting into it. I love making order out of chaos. It truly is one of my
That's what I
favorite
brought to you.
to
I said, let
do.
me give you this Google Doc full of my ideas and thoughts.
Yeah, and I was like, let's get into it. Yeah. And the process was what, an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe,
Yeah,
of live versioning on the Google Doc, pouring little cups of coffee, and then kind of moving stuff around, and me putting my comments on here and here. And like, I think that this is a little bit too advanced to get into at this point. Let's bring it down. I think this makes more sense up here. And so, you know, it's another helpful human who can help understand what you're trying to do and also fill in the gaps of things that you might be missing. So.
it saved me so much time and energy and made creating the content for it a million times easier.
Well, and that's the thing.
Literally.
Is that if you are called to want to be both a healer and a teacher, or a blend of the two, or whatever it is, if you have this purpose and calling and you know what you want to teach, and all you're missing is the structure and how to do
Mhm.
the rest,
Get some help.
you
Ask
know,
for some
yeah, I
support.
got you.
Yeah,
You know,
ask for some support. We cannot be an
yeah,
expert in everything. And that's where I was like, this is not something that I can do on my own.
yeah.
Let me go see Molly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%, you know, and it's not that you also even have to be now a professional teacher, right? But you have
Mhm.
now taken what you're an expert in and simply structured the curriculum so that you can then guide the people through it in the way that you already naturally authentically do, right? So yeah, so I'm happy to promote that, especially to this specific group, right? Which are people wanting to be practitioners, people wanting to kind of grow their own knowledge in business, be learners and teachers as well. So yeah, I'm happy to support all of you.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Molly, so much for coming on today. I appreciate you. This is such a fun and informative chat.
Yeah, this was
Yes.
awesome. Would love to do it as many times as you want to.
Awesome. Okay. And y'all, I'm going to put all of Molly's information underneath the video as well so that you can contact her.
Yeah. At
Yeah.
R&R with Molly B, hashtag R&R with Molly B, R&R with MollyB.com.
Thank you, Molly.
Thank you, Paige. It was a pleasure.